Hello, my name is Colin and I'm with BlocksmithXR. Today we'll be taking a look at how to gamify an imported 3D model in the BlocksmithXR builder using just a few simple game elements in about 15 minutes. So we'll see if we can take an animated 3D model and see if we can gamify it with a couple quick objects that we can add in. Really quickly though, if you haven't heard about us, BlocksmithXR basically allows you to create all the games and 3D experiences that you want, and then play those across a variety of devices, including virtual reality. So you can actually, create something very quickly, in about 15 minutes, and then put on a virtual reality headset, and then play or enter or immerse yourself in the creation or scene that you just made. So let's get started. This is a continuation of a project that I've been working on for about 3 weeks now. And this is a 3D model. The main book part, as you can see, is a 3D model that I imported from Sketchfab from a really cool user named Pixel, who made this a downloadable free 3D model. Over the past few weeks, I've added a few things like animations into this existing animated 3D model. And I'll play the scene so you can see some of those, like the animations on the fish, on the drawbridge over there. And then we also took a look at how to actually add in interactions. So not only just moving objects, but actually objects that you can walk up to and interact or touch. So for example, the gate here, last week I programmed to open with a simple touch event. So basically you could go up and walk to the gate and then touch it to have it open. All right. This week, I'm going to take that interactivity to a whole new level by adding in a little bow and arrow model that you can actually pick up and then go around this little medieval scene and kind of just shoot off some arrows at some things. So let's take a look at kind of how we can get started with that process. Okay, so in the bottom of my builder here, I have some shapes, some 3D shapes that I can add in. But I also have this models tab on the right side in which I can add pre-made models. So in preparation for this stream, I actually put together a little bow and arrow model that I can search for because I made this public. So bow and arrow. And I'll drag that into my scene and place it right next to my player. All right, I'll rotate that around a little bit so it's facing the same direction. And I'll just give this to my player. So one way you can actually make your player, or the person, this blue figure, the person who's actually entering your game, hold objects or carry around objects is by using their hands. So you can add an object to a player's hand just by clicking on the player and then going to the right settings panel and click on Add Object to add the bow. Now, when I play my viewer to enter that first person mode, I can actually, wield this bow that I just added. So in just a minute, I already have one, game element that I have pre-created. But I also want to show you how this works because I think it's, very valuable to understand, kind of how I'm able to shoot these arrows. All right, so let's take a quick look at this arrow model, and then bow and arrow model. And then we'll actually get started with creating the game by adding a few, figures or targets that I can kind of shoot and have them be animated, topple over and that kind of fun stuff. So let's take a quick look at actually how this arrow model works, or bow and arrow model. If you're a new user, it might look a little complicated because, there's a lot of interesting looking objects around here, like my spawner and my grip handle and this extra animated arrow here. Basically though, the way this works is if the user clicks, then my spawner will send an event to itself to have it launch or spawn an arrow inside of it. And then it will simply play an animation on that back arrow and deactivate the front arrow to kind of make it look like it's reloading. So it may seem like a kind of a complex model, but it's very easy to pick apart and understand just by using that little edit object button, and then you can kind of see how it works. Okay, so one thing I just wanted to note really quick is what my actual arrows actually do when they hit something. So I just went inside my spawner, and here I have my arrow model. This will, basically when it hits anything, so this is my hit target event, so when it collides with anything, it will stop its motion, and it will play this small little animation just a couple times. That's what this loop, animation loop part is about. And that's basically making the arrow quiver in place. So that way I can have the bow and arrow model look pretty realistic, because it can hit something and then kind of quiver as if it has some force behind it. Okay, so that's how that bow and arrow model works. Now let's actually get to adding in some of the figures that we can have a game with. All right, so instead of adding in a pre-made Blocksmith model, which we have in this BlocksmithXR area or in my models, these are my specific ones. We also have a large collection of shared 3D models given to us by Google Poly. So Google Poly consists of, and I can go to all here to show you, tons and tons of pre-made existing 3D models that you can just drag into your scene without having to make it all. And I know under people, there's a really cool archer model, kind of like a medieval, there we go, medieval archer model that will fit really well with the art style existing in my medieval storybook scene already. So I think that this kind of low poly look to the archer model will fit in really well with my storybook. So let's move them up to my castle. Okay, so now that I have my archer model, I can really quickly add an animation to make them look like they got kind of hit by an arrow and get knocked back a little bit. And the way you do that is you just click on the animation tab. And similar to the large GLTF model, and that's what this castle is, I can actually animate my archer model as well. So it's not just Blocksmith objects that you can animate, it's also some imported objects. All right, so I'll animate my archer to fall back and kind of get like knocked over. And I want this to happen pretty quickly. I want my arrow to collide and then get knocked down. So I want to decrease my animation duration. So I'll go to 0.1. And that might be a little too quick. I'll go to 0.3. And I want them to kind of accelerate into it. So I want them to ease in other words. And finally, I don't want them to just fall over at the beginning of the scene. I want them to fall over when they get hit by an arrow. So basically, I want that animation to play at a trigger. My arrow will trigger that animation instead of just playing at start. All right, so how do I actually trigger that animation, though? That's waiting for some kind of thing to occur. If I go back to my player really quick and take a look at my arrow model, so where's my spawner? There it is. My arrow model has a deal damage, or excuse me, target take damage event. So basically, each time anything is hit by an arrow, it will also take damage if it has hit points. So I'm going to enable hit points on my archer model, which is just a very quick check the box. And they start off with 10 hit points. However, that arrow model only did, the arrow only did 1 damage, so I'd have to hit them 10 times with an arrow to do 10 damage. So instead, I'm going to lower that to 1. So just 1 arrow will be enough. And then I will simply add an event on hit points less than or equal to 0. So when I get hit by an arrow, in other words, then I want it to play its animation. Perfect. And I'll slow that animation down actually to a couple seconds, because I want them to not immediately pop back. So I'll do about a second there. All right. And I'll add another event, which I don't want all my archers to, just disappear and then stay gone. Oh, I kind of want them to pop back up. So I'll have this say, when the animation is finished, then I want this object to respawn. So essentially, when it gets hit by an arrow, it will fall over. And then when it's finished falling, it will kind of pop up or respawn, pop back in the scene, so I can keep shooting arrows at some of these models. All right, I think that's ready for a test. So I'm going to say, animation finished. Yep, looks good. And let's just test out my archer or my arrow really quick. All right, boom. All right, so they got hit by the arrow and were sent down playing that animation. And it looked like they were just about to get crushed by that by that giant drawbridge too. So that was probably a benefit, for them, shooting them with an arrow. I'm going to call it that. All right, so I have an archer model that works pretty well. I'm going to make these a little bit bigger so they're a little bit easier targets. but I want to put them at the top of my castle and just kind of around my scene. So I have some good targets for my bow and arrow model. All right. If you're wondering what I'm doing right now to get all these different models in, I'm simply pressing the R key, and that is the shortcut for the duplicate ability. So I'm just duplicating this archer a few times around my scene, so I have some good targets for my player to shoot at. All right, something like that. And let's move that original one. Let's put them at the top of the, there we go, at the top of the parapets, just with the other archer models. All right, so let's take a look at how this looks. All right, now in my scene, I have these, well, they're actually pretty big archer models, which I can shoot arrows at and see them fall over. Perfect. All right, so it looks like I don't have quite enough power to make it to the top archer models yet. So what I'm gonna do really quick, just to finish up my game, is give my player a little bit more power to my bow, you know, make it maybe like a long bow instead of a short bow, so they can hit some of those top archer models. And if you are following along with the challenge, definitely check out this part, because this is how you can adjust the power of the bow. So under the player, if you click on them, you can edit the object that they're holding. And then on the spawner itself, you have a launch power for actually how fast that object that is coming from the spawner, which in my case is an arrow, how fast it will actually be launched. So I'm going to increase that. I'm going to go to about 5. Let's say, yeah, perfect. And now when I play my viewer, my arrows should have enough power to reach the top of my castle, which is what I'm going for. There we go. Perfect. And of course, I can still launch them around my scene. So I'll go explore my castle here, kind of shooting some arrows in the meantime. See them sticking the castle walls there. And oh, there's a couple of the archers that I took down. All right, so this looks pretty good. I have my bow and arrow game set up. And if I wanted to extend this, I could add in some things like, you know, a spawner that moves around the scene and constantly spawns some of those animated archer models. I could also try and set up some variables. So if you want to take a part of this challenge, or just try and do it your own bow and arrow game, you can set up some variables for maybe how many arrows you have, and then each time you click, you subtract an arrow from you know, your existing, you know, quiver basically. Or you could make you know, each time you score or hit, you know, an archer, then you score a point. And that's simply, you know, just adding on a simple little event here that would say, you know, other object, click on your score variable, and then just do +1. So that the extendability for these games is super easy, and we would love to see everybody try and you know, add in that bow and arrow model to your own projects. But definitely, you know, remix it, and maybe if you want to do 2 arrows spawning at once, you could do that. Or you know, and maybe add a little fire effect so you have flaming arrows. There's tons of fun things you can do with this project, and we would love to see everybody's creations, you know, with animated models that they bring in, or maybe with just their own medieval, you know, storybook scenes. All right, we would love to see those projects come in. I hope you enjoyed this basic little way you can gamify a 3D model, an animated 3D model, by adding in some of those Blocksmith elements from the models area, and then also adding in some of those Google Poly objects to really quickly and easily make a game that you can share with your friends and family. I really hope you enjoyed this live stream today. Once again, my name's Colin. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to the Blocksmith YouTube channel, because we post tons of live streams there that you can see how to do things within the BlocksmithXR builder, like making games or educational scenes. And then we also kind of show how you can you know, use some of the other features of the software, like some of our learning tools. So definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done it yet, sign up for an account and download the builder so you can try out these challenges and projects for yourself. All right, thank you for joining me today. I hope to see you next week.